Here's a harsh truth history doesn't like to talk about. Evil doesn't always end in chaos. Sometimes it ends in silence. In the final days of World War II, while cities burned and millions died, Adolf Hitler didn't flee. He didn't surrender. He didn't face justice. Instead, he hid underground listening to the world. He destroyed collapse above his head. This is not the myth. This is not the legend. This is the real story of Hitler's final days, told from inside the bunker, where fear replaced power and echoes replaced command. By April 1945, Germany was finished. Berlin was surrounded. The Soviet army was less than 2 miles away. Artillery shook the city day and night. Above ground, civilians hid in basements. While buildings collapsed around them, children cried, hospitals overflowed. The air smelled of smoke, dust, and death. But Hitler wasn't there. He was underground. 40 feet beneath the ruins of Berlin sat the Führerbunker, a concrete tomb built not for comfort, but for survival. The walls were thick, the ceilings low, the air damp. It smelled of sweat, stale smoke, and despair. This was the final headquarters of the Third Reich. Inside were Adolf Hitler, Eva Braun, Joseph Goebbels and his family, military aides, secretaries' guards, who knew the war was lost but stayed anyway. There was no sunlight, no escape, only the sound of bombs and the slow realization that the empire was dead. Hitler was no longer the man seen in propaganda films. Witnesses described him as shaking uncontrollably, stooped and pale, his left hand trembling constantly. His rage was unpredictable, his hope delusional. He believed imaginary armies would arrive to save Berlin. He issued orders to divisions that no longer existed. When generals tried to tell him the truth, he screamed. Reality had become his enemy. One of the most disturbing questions is this: why didn't they leave? Some did, many didn't. Secretaries like Junge stayed because they felt trapped by loyalty. Guards stayed because desertion meant execution. Goebbels stayed because his entire identity was tied to Hitler. And Eva Braun stayed for one reason only. She refused to leave the man she loved, even if it meant dying with him. On April 29, 1945, as Soviet shells landed just outside, Hitler made an announcement. He would marry Eva Braun. There was no celebration, no joy, just a small room, a few witnesses, and a short ceremony conducted in whispers. Hours later, he dictated his last will and testament. In it, he blamed the war on everyone except himself. Even at the end, he refused responsibility. Above all the horrors, one detail stands out as the most chilling. Joseph Goebbels brought his 6 children into the bunker. They played in the hallways. They slept while bombs fell above them. And when the end came, their parents made a choice that still horrifies historians. Rather than let their children live in a world without Nazism, they murdered them, silently, methodically. The bunker never forgot those screams. By April 30th, the end was unavoidable. Soviet troops were meters away. The bunker shook constantly. Hitler said goodbye to his staff. Some cried, some saluted, some stared in silence. Then he and Eva Braun retreated into a private room. A gunshot was heard. Moments later, the door was opened. Hitler was dead. Eva Braun lay beside him. The war in Europe would end days later, but for those in the bunker, history had already closed its door. In the garden above the bunker, aides carried the bodies outside. Under shell fire, they poured gasoline and burned them. Not out of respect, out of fear. Hitler had ordered his body destroyed so it would never be paraded like Mussolini's. Even in death, he tried to control his image. The bunker was eventually sealed. Berlin rebuilt. The war ended, but the echoes remained. The echoes of fear, of blind loyalty, of a leader who chose death over accountability. This wasn't the end of evil. It was a war.